Hey, welcome to a new episode of the Front Pew Podcast, a podcast for pastors by pastors. My name's Chris. I'm the pastor at Denver Baptist Church.
And I am Matt Capps, the pastor of Fairview Baptist Church in Apex, North Carolina, and we are back, Griggs.
We're back. We made it back.
We're back.
I've had a lot of people ask about the Front Pew Podcast. Why haven't we recorded in a while? Several reasons. One is that we've been very busy. You especially. You're a busy guy. I mean,
It's been a busy season. But busy, yeah. Baptist State Convention stuff, church stuff.
We haven't recorded an episode in a while, but you've been on a number of podcasts as a guest.
See, Griggs is going to bring this up, and
I never get invited to those things. The Capper gets invited because he's got 70,000 Twitter followers. We know it's true, Caps. We know.
But Griggs, you are the heart of the Front Pew. I mean, if it wasn't for you, there would be no Front Pew.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people ask me about it, and when are we going to record again? And I tell them the same thing. I'm just trying to get on Caps' schedule because Caps is so busy. But with church work, and then state convention work, you've been the president of the board at state convention. And then all this other stuff going on, church podcast. We're starting a church podcast. It's crazy. Yeah. It's very busy. But it's good to be back. It's very good to be back. And one of the reasons that we were really motivated to record a new episode was because we both hung out in Nashville last week at the Southern Baptist Convention.
We did.
It was a big deal.
All right, Griggs, what before we get to the convention, what was your favorite food you ate in Nashville?
My favorite food. Actually, my favorite food I had in Knoxville, Tennessee, on my way to Nashville.
That's not the question. Nashville.
In Nashville, my favorite food in Nashville. Good grief! It was probably. Now I did go to the pharmacy and got a hamburger.
Yeah,
and it was okay.
Oh man, no.
It was okay. It was okay.
The pharmacy is the best burger in the world, but the Nashville hot chicken, the Hattie B's hot chicken,
it was good. It was delicious.
It's still my go-to.
I love the hot chicken. It was delicious. Yeah. And the little restaurants around there that we hit that were real. Everything was good, Caps. I heard about one guy who'd been on a serious diet. He'd lost a ton of weight, and he gained 10 pounds in 3 days in Nashville.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. I was talking to a guy today about it. His brother he gained 10 pounds in 3 days. I didn't go that crazy. I did not go that crazy. But anyway, I'm at camp right now. I'm at student camp at Snowbird Wilderness Outfitters up in Andrews, North Carolina. So I'm up in the mountains where, if you know the name Eric Robert Rudolph, do you know that name?
Yes,
he was.
There's an excellent Netflix special on him. But go ahead.
Well, he was caught up here, up in these. I'm up in the woods up here, with very spotty service. So I hope that I don't lose you, Caps. If I lose you, I'll just carry on, and I'll just finish the show out. It's kind of like a wedding. I've done weddings. I tell the wedding party, if somebody faints, we're moving you out and we keep going on. I ain't stopping. So bend your knees, don't you faint. Anyway. So we were in Nashville and at the Southern Baptist Convention, and we thought, man, there's so much media and so much Twitter and so much conversation around the SBC. We thought we'd talk about it. We do realize that not everybody who listens to the Front Pew is part of the Southern Baptist Convention. But we think it might be interesting to you, especially if you're in a denomination like Presbyterian Church, Episcopal Church, even if you're non-denominational. It might be interesting for you to know, number one, Caps, this is the number one biggest misconception about the Southern Baptist Convention. We are not a denomination.
Mm-hmm. I've heard you say that often, Chris. So why don't you explain it?
Okay. So we are a voluntary network of independent churches who partner together to get the gospel to the nations. We are a bottom-up, not top-down structure. And what that simply means is that the headquarters of the Southern Baptist Convention is the local church. We don't have a hierarchy. We don't have a bishop. We don't have a pope. We don't have anybody over us telling us what we have to do and believe. As a result of that, we have some interesting things that happen. Now, so we partner to get the gospel to the nation. We have to have some boundaries on our partnership. So we have two boundaries. We have this thing called the cooperative program where every church says, all right, I want to be a part of this network. And, okay, so then you're going to have to support our mission efforts financially. So we give to the cooperative program. The second thing that we have to have is some doctrinal boundaries. So we can't partner with everybody. So we have a doctrinal statement called the Baptist Faith and Message 2000. And if you teach and order your ministry within the bounds of the Baptist Faith and Message, and you financially contribute to the cooperative program, you are a part of the Southern Baptist Convention.
So as my friend Trevin said, that we're primarily organized around doctrinal consensus and missional cooperation. That's the organizational structure.
Yeah, that's the organizational structure. So what that means, and Caps, this is going to sound crazy, all right? All right, I want to ask you a question, Caps. And we're not, I guess maybe this is one of those questions you don't want me to ask you, all right? I'm going to ask it anyway. All right, can you think of somebody, all right, in the church who pastors a church who might be a little wacky, who's also SBC?
Yes.
All right, who?
I'm not going to say that out loud.
Well, you should. Just say it out loud. Who? Okay, let's just pick one that everybody kind of agrees that can be a little wacky. Stephen Furtick.
Okay.
Stephen Furtick.
Stephen Furtick. Okay, there.
All right.
There you go.
Stephen planted Elevation as an SBC church. A lot of people will listen to Stephen and they'll say, you know, some of that stuff's good, but some of it's a little wacky, right? So, but guess who else is in the SBC? Al Mohler. And so a lot of people question, how can Al Mohler and Stephen Furtick be in the same group?
Especially Stephen Furtick went to Southern Seminary where Al Mohler was the president.
Yeah. And so the answer is the Baptist Faith and Message 2000. It's intentionally kind of broad enough to facilitate partnership, right? Now, a lot of people don't like that. I might be one of those guys that wish it was a little tighter.
Yeah, me too.
But the Baptist Faith and Message, for example, doesn't tell you what eschatological position you have to hold, all right? Doesn't tell you. You just have to believe in the physical return of Christ.
Well, let me ask you this while we're on it. Do you think because of the trajectory of culture and the way really theology in the academy is going, that we're going to have to tighten the bounds over the next few years?
Well, I think so. We tightened it in 2000. Yeah. And I think we're going to have to tighten it up again. But you have to remember that the Southern Baptist Convention was formed to get the gospel to the nations. It has a terrible beginning with its racist stuff, right? Slaveholders and all that mess. We've repented of that 1,000 times. We've never repented of our desire to get the gospel to the nations and to partner with like-minded people.
Yeah.
And
so what most people don't know is when it was originally started, what was it, late 1800s, the primary purpose was for it to be a funding mechanism for the Home Mission Board, which is now the North American Mission Board,
right,
and the Foreign Mission Board, which is now the International Mission Board. And the goal was that every state would send 50% of their gifts
I didn't know that.
To the national level. And ever since its founding, very few states, I don't even know if any states, maybe a few, have actually hit that intended goal of the 50-50 split.
So I didn't know that. Now, I will say that that this partnership that we have to get the gospel to the nations, what happens as culture shifts, as things in the academy shift, we have to speak clearly about some doctrinal things.
Yeah.
But our Baptist Faith and Message just doesn't go there. Now, this can be a bad thing because sometimes we're not clear on doctrinal positions, but it can be a good thing because there's no one over my local church telling me what I have to believe. I can go as far as I want to go. If I start with the Baptist Faith and Message, for example, and I decide that I want to lead my church to adopt the 1689 Second Baptist London Confession of Faith, I can do that.
Yeah.
I can do that. So anyway, the local church is the headquarters of the convention. If you don't get that, you'll think we're a denomination, and what will happen is you'll see something in the news, and you'll see something like, I don't know, something that you disagree with theologically happening in one Southern Baptist church, and you're trying to figure out, well, why don't they just fire that guy? Or you hear something on Twitter about something that a seminary president said, and you're like, well, why don't the Southern Baptists just fire that guy? We're not a denomination. That's not how it works. And so
Well, it's kind of like a double-edged sword, though, because like you say, it's good in the sense that there's no hierarchy that can tell you what to do or preach or what to believe in your church. But the other side of that is, well, that also means that you have guys like Stephen Furtick who can be a Southern Baptist and say really crazy things that either borderline or are heretical.
Or you get some really traditional guys that will walk into King James only or landmarkism. It goes both ways. So it's a double-edged sword. So when you read about the Southern Baptist Convention and what happened, if you're just on Twitter, you're going to come away with the idea that there's a bunch of liberals running this thing, or a bunch
Isn't that amazing?
Or a bunch of fundamentalists running this thing, and you're thinking, what in God's name is happening with the Southern Baptist Convention? Because you're being told by the media it's the largest Protestant denomination in the United States. We're not a denomination. And if you don't understand that, a lot of what happens amongst our churches is just going to confuse you. It's not going to make a lot of sense.
All right, so you've hit the denomination thing. I want to go back to what you just said because this is important. The national news, the media, was reporting, and I saw this, I think it was the Washington Post, maybe it was the New York Times, I can't remember where I saw it, but several newspapers had reported that there was a theological drift. We had elected a moderate or liberal president. I mean, it was all over the news, couched in those terms. And I had church members on Sunday asking me about that and saying things like, hey, we were praying for you, and we were sad to see that the Southern Baptist Convention has taken a turn towards liberalism.
Yeah.
And I thought,
right.
Whoever wrote that report was not in the same meeting I was in Nashville.
Correct.
Or they were, and they just didn't understand what they were hearing. Or they were in the room, and they were listening to a certain sect of the room, like the Conservative Baptist Network, who was painting it in a certain picture. Right.
We've always had networks and fellowships and groups that form around their affinities, right? I mean, that's, that always happens. But the Southern Baptist Convention also is very interesting. It only exists 2 days out of the year. In June. The Southern Baptist Convention, and what's today's date, Caps? I'm at camp. I don't even know what today's date is. Do you know? It's June something.
I don't know off the top of my head. Yeah, June 24th.
The Southern Baptist Convention does not exist right now.
Right.
It only exists for 2 days in June. The root of convention is convene. We meet together for 2 days to decide how we're going to fund, support, and send missionaries. That's what we decide for 2 days. We've got to pass a budget, and we got to elect officers and trustees and all that kind of stuff, And there's other things that happen. But let's talk about the big issues, because you just hit on it, the liberal drift that's being reported in the news, and some of the folks in our church are concerned that maybe the Southern Baptist Convention has gone liberal. Well, in 1979, the Southern Baptist Convention was going liberal. We had seminary presidents and professors who denied orthodox teaching. For example, we had seminary professors who denied the inerrancy of Scripture, the historicity of Adam, who denied the presence of Satan in the Old Testament, who denied, believe it or not, the physical resurrection of Jesus Christ.
Right.
These were our seminary professors that every local church was paying for through the cooperative program, but that wasn't the heart of the people in the pew. And so in 1979, action was taken to reverse course, because we literally were on the precipice of full-blown liberalism and becoming theologically like mainline denominations, all right? What we're facing today is not that.
Yeah.
It is not that.
Well, there's a group, though, that is characterizing where we are now in those terms and saying that we are shifting towards a more liberal or even moderate theology.
Because the Baptist faith and message is broad, we're always going to have these theological skirmishes. So there was the whole Calvinism, Arminian thing going on years ago, which was going to split the convention, all right? because the Baptist Faith and Message allows for both.
Yeah.
It's worded to allow for both. Now, we got a couple of hotbed issues that now we're talking about. And the first one, let's walk into it, women pastors. Let's talk about women pastors. The Baptist Faith and Message says very clearly that the position of elder is only for a man. That's it. There's nobody in the SBC who disagrees with that. If they disagree with that, then they get out of the SBC.
Right.
Nobody agrees with that. That the teaching and ruling elder of the church should be a man. And that elder has responsibility to oversee not only the work of the church, but to protect the doctrine of the church. And so the difficult part comes with the function of an elder, specifically preaching.
Well, that's what I was going to push back on you, because you said teaching a minute ago. The Baptist Faith and Message literally reads on that section this. It's scriptural officers, this is talking about the church, are pastors and deacons. While both men and women are gifted for service in the church, the office of pastor is limited to men as qualified by Scripture. So the question comes
about teaching.
What about the functioning of preaching and teaching? Is that exercising authority in a pastoral way? Is that limited to the office of pastor, or that's the question?
So because the Baptist Faith and Message does not definitively answer that question, then my local church, we get to decide how we interpret the Scriptures and apply it.
Right.
There's nobody above us, no entity over us telling us this is how you have to do it. So we have some good brothers and sisters, good churches, who disagree on the function of an elder. So we'll have somebody who is comfortable, for example, inviting his wife on stage as he's preaching a series on marriage and family and letting her speak with him on that subject to the congregation.
Correct.
There are other churches and brothers who say, there's no way in the world I would do that. And guess what? Both of those positions are allowed by the Baptist Faith and Message. We can still partner together to get the gospel to the world. But if you are really convinced that having a woman stand on the platform, hold on. Are you still with me, Caps?
Yeah.
Man, I haven't gotten a phone call all week and somebody just beeped in.
I saw a picture of a Christmas tree. I don't know what that was.
From Cary, North Carolina. So somebody from the headquarters of the Baptist State Convention needs me.
Calling. They know you're talking about this right now.
They need me.
They know you're on the board of directors, and they're about to shut us down.
Oh no. So anyway, here's the rub. Caps, I'm just going to lay my cards on the table. I'm not going to have a woman stand in the pulpit on Sunday morning and preach or teach. That's me. That's our church. I got a brother down the street who's Southern Baptist who's going to. All right, fine. I'm not going to go to war over that. And we're still going to partner together and share our resources to get the gospel to the nations.
Yeah.
Now,
and I'd be in the same camp as you, because I do believe that the office of pastor and the function of preaching are both ways of exercising authority in the congregation.
Yeah.
And so
I do
that's
too.
kind of where I stand as well. So.
But here's again, here we are with a very broad statement of faith that's intentionally broad to encourage partnership and mission. Now, it can get a little dicey, Caps, because we got seminaries that are training and teaching people and sending them out to be missionaries. And so the concern is, are we sending out missionaries who are not complementarian, who are okay with women pastors and preachers? No, nobody's okay with women pastors. Nobody is. But okay with women preachers. And so we have this debate. We think, well, I think that we should change the Baptist Faith and Message. And another brother says, well, I don't think we should. And so that's what happens. All right. And that was really the dust up over Beth Moore, to be honest with you. As the whole dust up over Beth Moore was, she is going out preaching in churches. She believes in women preachers. And she would say, I do believe in women preachers, but I don't believe in women pastors.
So, in other words, she is separating the office of pastor and the function of preaching as equal, or as part of what it means to be, called as a pastor. So.
And that's allowed in our partnership. You don't have to like it, but that's the way it is, right? So that's been a big thing swirling around. What's been another big thing that we had to deal with?
Resolution 9. That was a big one.
Oh, big deal. So explain Resolution 9. What are we dealing with?
All right. So one of the things you have to understand is resolutions are statements that the Southern Baptist Convention makes every year on cultural or theological issues. Now,
They are their opinions.
yeah, their opinions. Keep in mind, though, what Chris said a minute ago is that the convention only gathers for a few days a year, and when it's not in session, in essence, it doesn't exist. So when the 2019 convention gathered and affirmed Resolution 9, we'll get to that in a minute, that was a statement made by the 2019 convention, the group of people in that room. That group no longer exists. So the convention of 2019 made that resolution. This is why there's been some discussion about overturning Resolution 9. But in essence, you cannot rewrite history because those same people are not in the same room anymore. You can't overturn a resolution that was made by a group of people that can no longer exist.
So that convention in 2019 expressed their opinion about critical race theory, and they used the word analytical tool in the resolution, which really upset a lot of people. I think it's a poor choice of words myself. I think I would have worded it differently. I know that I would have. But the resolution as a whole, if you take out that and you take out the idea that it can be a useful tool, if you take out that idea, it's a really good resolution, right? It's solid. There was one part in it that bothered a lot of people. But they expressed their opinion. You can't change their opinion. All you can do is express your opinion this year on it. You can't go back and tell those people that their opinion, you're changing their opinion. Nobody has the right to change your opinion or my opinion in any given year, and that's the whole point. So talk about how come that became a thing this year.
Well, let me say one more thing about Resolution 9 is that you could argue that based on the numbers and voting, that even the convention of 2019 wasn't resolved around it.
Yeah.
Right? Because it barely passed. So I'd like to have a whole nother conversation about resolutions in general.
Yeah.
But this year we had a new set of resolutions that we voted on, and Resolution 2, I think, dealt with similar issues, or at least racism, right?
Right.
So it was kind of like the attempt to right the history that people had trouble with.
So that resolution number 2 basically said that any ideology, I don't have it in front of me, but I'm summarizing, that makes race or the color of your skin as an evil thing or whatever is wrong, no matter what color your skin is, and that the answer is only the gospel of Jesus Christ, and the scripture is sufficient to diagnose what's really going on in the heart of man and in the culture and blah, 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 blah. But they included any and every ideology that wants to divide us on the basis of race. Mm-hmm. And they didn't just zero in on one issue, critical race theory or intersectionality. They put everything in one basket and said, let's just go ahead and condemn it all and say that it's godless and outside of the Baptist Faith and Message 2000, which is what the convention did. They voted to say, yes, any and every ideology that goes down that path to address racial issues is godless and wrong. Without saying critical race theory, they included it in that all ideologies phrase.
Yeah. The line literally reads, "We therefore reject any theory or worldview that denies that racism, oppression, and discrimination is rooted ultimately in anything other than sin, be it further, and reject any theory or worldview that finds its ultimate identity in human beings in ethnicity or any group dynamic."
Which is what critical race theory does.
Right.
So, but we had some brothers and sisters upset that we didn't call it by name in the resolution. Right?
You know, people are going to be upset about everything.
But I will say, being there at the convention, critical race theory was mentioned on the platform half a dozen times, and every time it was condemned by name. I went to some meetings, like some public meetings, like the Baptist 21 luncheon and different things. Nobody in that place affirms or embraces or thinks critical race theory is something that's compatible with the sufficiency of Scripture.
But here's the thing, though. You have a group within the convention that slaps CRT on everything, whether or not it's actually critical race theory. So, you have people that are saying that, Ed Litton, the new president,
Oh,
is
he's
a proponent.
woke.
Yeah, he's a proponent of CRT. And they're only saying that because he has worked to resolve some of the racial tension and see some racial reconciliation within his city, meeting with other brothers and pastors and Christians of different ethnicities. They slap CRT on that, when I would say, well, wait a minute, maybe he's just pursuing biblical unity,
biblical reconciliation.
Yeah, let's be careful with slapping out on everything, but that's what certain groups in the convention are playing this. You could call it the Donald Trump marketing scheme, right? Like stir up fear, create a narrative, and divide the room.
Yeah,
and that's what happened.
But what was interesting is the room was not divided.
Yeah,
it was only.
It
was not divided. It was divided on one issue, and that was who was going to be our next president.
Yeah.
But it wasn't divided on anything else. It really wasn't, and that's. I think that's an important thing for people to know who weren't there, is that the convention was fairly unified on like resolution number 2, and all those resolutions, fairly unified on saying we condemn any and every ideology that does what critical race theory does.
Yeah, And I wouldn't just say fairly unified. I'd say, on a lot of those resolutions, we were clearly unified. And
right.
That's the thing I've tried to tell people here as well, is that what you read in the secular news, what you even read in the blogs and see on Twitter, it's not representative of the people in the room. The people in the room, when we gather every year, by God's grace, we balance ourselves out, and by God's grace, we most of the time come out on the right end.
Yeah, I will tell you that. I've been going to these conventions for 30 years, right?
Yeah.
I haven't been to 30 conventions, but I've been going for 30 years. This was the youngest convention I've ever been to. I've never seen more baby strollers at a convention in my life. We used to, when I would go to the convention, this is no lie, me and my buddies would play a game called Count the Toupees. Man, you can't play that game anymore. I don't know, it's because nobody wears a toupee anymore, but they're just...
You were playing Count the Cappers.
Yeah, I was playing. There's a ton of people that look like Matt Capps. Like, you've got doppelgangers all over the place. But it was also the most colorful convention I've ever been to.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't believe how many ethnicities were represented, not only in the crowd with the messengers,
on the stage,
but on the platform, everywhere. You know what? It was like it felt normal. I can tell you 30 years ago, when you went to the convention and there was like a black guy sitting in the hall, everybody went up to him and said, "Oh, we're so glad you're here. Please bring your friends." Because there just weren't that much color in the room. Now it's normal. Everywhere you look.
Well, that was the great thing. Was it the nominations committee? There was different committees when they were standing on stage. I thought, man, that's a diverse committee. And then you had, I think it's great to see some of our Southern Baptist women leading these efforts.
Yeah.
And standing up and speaking on behalf of the committees and leading things. I mean, it really is. It was an exciting convention to be in. Yeah,
the chair of Guidestone Financial, which is a entity that provides us with insurance and retirement, annuity, and all that kind of stuff. The chair of the trustees is an African-American woman. Not because she's a woman and not because she's African-American, but because she's a financial wizard. And she's brilliant. And those things are normal now. They're normal. It's not about quotas. It's not about somehow putting together a scheme to put people of color in positions as tokens. There are really qualified, smart, brilliant, Jesus-loving Southern Baptists of all different colors and men and women that are qualified, and they're finding those roles and places and serving very well. All right, Caps, let me give you the last thing I want to talk about, which I think, in my opinion, was the most serious and important issue that we dealt with at the SBC.
What's that?
Well, the SBC has, what is it, 14 entities?
Yeah.
And it includes the seminaries and the mission boards. It also includes this body called the Executive Committee. And the Executive Committee is made up of men and women from around the United States. There's like 86 members of it or something like that. I don't know. And they basically oversee the business of the convention in between meetings. Okay? And every year when we have our convention, they present a book of reports. And in that report are motions that they want us to pass. Like they make a motion on a budget. And so we have to vote to accept and adopt the budget and all this kind of, it's normal. It's like a business meeting, right? It's normal stuff. Well, this year they proposed a motion to change something called the Business and Finance Plan of the entities of the SBC. And this is going to sound confusing, but it's really important. Years ago, the messengers basically voted and told every entity, every seminary, every mission board, you have to follow this business plan when you're conducting business. When it comes to borrowing money, paying money back, putting together budgets. And so every entity follows the business plan. The trustees of those entities have to hold this, like the seminary has to hold the seminary accountable to following the business plan. The executive committee, their job is to receive all this money from the churches and then send it to the entities to support their work. So they send money to the International Mission Board to fund missionaries. They send money to seminaries, all that stuff. Their job is just to send the money. They don't get to decide whether an entity should get the money or not. They just send the money. But the motion they made this year was to change the business plan to give that committee of people the authority to withhold the money from an institution if they didn't feel like that institution or entity was playing by the rules. And it gave that group of people hierarchy power over the other entities. But we're not a denomination.
Well, they attempted to give that group hierarchy power.
Yeah. And so the convention almost unanimously voted to deny that motion. To say,
Hey, let me ask you a question to try to get you in trouble.
Yeah, go ahead.
Who in the executive committee do you think started that whole movement to get that motion to the floor?
Who? I don't even know who's on the thing. I don't even know.
All right.
I know that the executive committee was tasked with putting together a plan that showed more transparency in how they handled money. And they put that in that plan of changing. They gave themselves power to prevent an entity from getting their money if they thought that they didn't play by the rules. The problem with that is that responsibility goes to the trustees of that institution.
Right.
One entity is not over another entity. We don't have popes. We don't have entities over other entities. We don't have a hierarchy. It's bottom up, not top down. So I was pleased, Matt. I was extremely pleased that motion was overwhelmingly body slammed by the convention and denied. Because, again, back to the top of the show, we're not a denomination.
Right.
We are a voluntary network of autonomous churches who partner together to get the gospel to the nations within the parameters of the Baptist Faith and Message 2000 and the cooperative program. That's what we do. That's who we are. Now, so that was my biggest moment was that moment right there. That was huge for me. All right, you got anything else you want to add?
The last thing I'll say is this: if you're listening to this podcast and you're concerned about the convention, what I said Sunday to our people was that we are not divided. I don't think we're not so divided we can't fix it, and at the same time we're not so great that we can't be critiqued.
Right.
I think we always have to have our eyes on this. But one of the false narrative that's been spread around in the media and on social media about the liberal takeover is just really not fair. I mean, I've seen some groups are slandering some of our best conservative leaders. They're drawing lines in the sand that go beyond what the Baptist faith and message calls for when it comes to our theological unity. And I would just encourage you to be weary of those discernment blogger and fake news posts that are saying that we're drifting. I told our church the anchor holds the Baptist faith and message, the missional cooperation, the people in the room. We're in a good place. And I think we were talking about this before the show, but Nathan Finn, who's a historian, a Baptist historian. There's an article on sbcvoices.com where basically Finn walks through his observations on this year, and he wrote a PhD dissertation on the development of Baptist fundamentalism in the South from 1940 to 1980. And he not only defines fundamentalism, but he also says it is a reactionary posture born out of concerns. So I think what you have is, you have to remember that the Southern Baptist Convention as a whole is a conservative group of like-minded churches and Christians. But you have a group within that conservative body that is drawing lines, and you could say they're having a reactionary posture towards concerns for perceived leaders and institutions, which I think it worries me, because they are posturing themselves as the conservatives within the body of conservatives, which is why you have news media and social media saying that the Southern Baptist Convention is drifting. No, you actually just have militant fundamentalists in the group who are calling everyone else a liberal with no ground to stand on. So be very careful with what you believe. Listen, when you read it on the news.
All right, so Protestants, Baptists, in particular, we get very passionate about things, and we have always been a group that is passionate about anything that is perceived to be an enemy of the gospel.
Yeah.
And I thank God for that. And I think right now we have some good brothers and sisters who perceive some of these things to be enemies of the gospel rather than, difficulties in partnership, right? According to the Baptist Faith and Message. Let's talk about some good things real quick. All right. Mm-hmm. The first good thing was that we got to be a part of an event at the convention where we commissioned 64 missionaries to go out to the nations. I'm telling you, Caps, I don't think there was a dry eye in the place.
What other body of churches does that?
I know. And they're completely funded by the churches. The churches have sent them out. They stood on that platform. They introduced themselves. They shared where they were going and what they were going to do and asked us to pray for them. They're going overseas with 4 and 5 kids in tow. And then some people could not be introduced except behind a screen in silhouette, because they're going into nations and countries where it's dangerous to share the gospel.
And
64
and this is the beauty. This is the beauty of the cooperative program, or the IMB, is that when they go, they don't have to worry about maintaining support raising.
Right.
Like that's part of our structure. You talk to other missionaries that are independent. When they come home to the States, they have to travel around and raise money to go back.
And
these,
so
these families can go.
You're sitting in that room, and and I'm telling you, it doesn't matter which side of the line you're on when it comes to Beth Moore, whether or not she should get up and teach in a church,
or Russ Moore.
We ought to do a whole episode on Russ Moore, because he is a Democrat liberal who is in favor of abortion. We ought to do a show on him. So anyway, listen.
It's fake news.
I know it is. That's not true. Well, maybe some of it is. We'll have to talk about it. I know. I'm messing. But anyway, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you are on those issues. In that moment, when 64 people are standing up and saying, "You're sending me to the nations," we are in unison. Mm-hmm. I mean, there wasn't a dry eye in my section. I mean, I'm just overwhelmed with the thought of these people uprooting their comfortable life in the United States, taking 3 small children around the world to give their life to seeing people come to Christ who've never heard the name of Jesus. That's who we are.
Yeah.
And that's why the theme of the convention was, "We are Great Commission Baptist." A second good thing about the convention is that this convention, I think we prayed more than I've ever prayed at a convention before. On our knees, our faces before God, praying for him to unify us and to use us to make a difference in the world. That was huge. That
was a pretty amazing sight when you 16, 17,000 people on their knees praying together.
Yeah.
Chris was on his knees a little bit longer. People thought he was more spiritual. People just thought Chris was more spiritual. He just couldn't get up because he's so old.
Well, I will tell you something, Caps. When the chair says, if you're able, get on your knees, I didn't get on my knees. I took a position. I knelt in my heart. That's what I did. But let me tell you the third thing. All right? The third good thing is just the reconnection with friends. And seeing friends, partners in ministry that you don't get to see very often. It is a family. It's kind of like a family reunion. We got a couple of crazy uncles. And every family has a guy who doesn't believe Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, right? And so we got a couple of those guys too. There's conspiracy theories around once in a while, But anyway, you see your buddies, you meet new friends. I met so many people that listen to the front pew. They just came up to me and saw my name tag. I didn't know who they were. Introduced themselves to me. They liked the program. They all said the same thing. When are you going to record? I said, I'm waiting on Caps. I'm waiting on Caps. And here we are. So anyway.
Hey, there's a couple of things I'd say. The seminary reports were encouraging.
Yeah.
We have some of the strongest seminaries in the United States, or in the world, really, for conservative theological education. I would say that the church planting, the unprecedented amount of church plants that we've sent out. I mean, you think about how NAM is structured, the North American Mission Board is structured to plant churches in major city centers that have little less gospel influence than we might have here in the South. When it comes to actually the presence of Southern Baptist churches, it was really encouraging. I mean, we can go on and on about the encouraging things that are happening. And so
anyway, that's our recap of the SBC. It was good. It was good hanging out with you, Caps, a little bit.
There's one final thing.
Yeah.
That I think we can't get off the show without saying is that the way the convention stood up to advocate for justice for the sex abuse victims.
Oh, that was huge.
That's huge. I mean, and the way that the floor, the voting on the floor,
is overwhelming.
To call for third-party investigations. I mean, that was a powerful moment, and to say that we're not going to tolerate in our churches, and we're going to seek justice in the areas where it's happened, and we're gonna advocate and love those victims. That was a pretty powerful moment.
That was huge. That was a huge moment, and overdue, and much thanks to Russell Moore, even though he's not with us, for being a champion of that for many years, and some other brothers who've been champions for years. The problem is that
absolutely.
The problem is we're not a denomination, so there isn't an entity that tells me what I have to do, and that makes it complicated. But we all agree now that we will not tolerate sexual abuse in our churches, and we will work together to eradicate it and to deal with it properly and bring healing to those who've been abused in our churches. So that was amazing. Now, Caps, listen, I know we've been talking for about almost 45 minutes now. And look,
we're just all over the place. This is what you get.
We're all over the place. It's unscripted, but it's snack shack time, bro. I'm at camp.
You got to go.
And I'm about to miss the snack shack, and I don't want to miss the snack shack. Up here, I found something out, Caps, at this camp. Listen to this. The youth pastor, or my youth pastor's up here, and apparently he has an account. I just found this out. And if he goes to buy food like snacks, and he just tells the lady his name. And she pulls his name up on the computer and puts it on his account. He's got this line.
What's his name?
His name is Michael Salonick. So I was sitting around a bunch of kids. I said, hey, y'all want something from the snack shack? That was this morning. They said, yeah. I said, it's on me. I'm buying it. Come on. Man, they want Gatorades and Baja, Mountain Dew, and all kinds of candy and stuff. And I ordered all this stuff, and then I looked at the cashier, and I said, Michael Salonick. And she punched his name in and said, all right, I got it. I walked off. All those kids were happy. spending Michael's money on all these kids. So anyway, but I got to go do that right now. I got to go spend some of his money on my my need for snacks. So, all right, Capper. Listen, this has been a good episode. It's been all over the place. If you have questions, send us an email, frontpew1@gmail.com. If Caps made you mad by mischaracterizing you as a fundamentalist, let us know. We want to hear from you. And
Nathan, it wasn't me. It was Nathan Finn.
So anyway, listen, we'd love to hear from you. It's great to be back with you on this Monday morning. Hope you have a great week in the Lord. And we will see you next time on the Front Pew. That's from camp.